Hello and welcome to the Tuesday Talk Show. With me, your host, Yvonne Gorman. This show and series is powered by Essential Print Services. Hello and welcome to everyone who's watching us live. Yes, this is live, unedited, unscripted, so anything can happen. If you've got your comments and questions, like always, please send them in. We'd love to hear from you, give you a shout out on the show. But this episode of the Tuesday Talk Show is with a very special guest of mine, a friend of the show, Neale Lewis. Hello and welcome to the Tuesday Talk Show, Neale.
Wow, what a welcome indeed. No, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, thank you for your time. I know time is very precious to us all business owners, so thank you for giving up your half an hour on a Tuesday morning. So, Neale, tell the audience at home and watching in the office today who you are, what you do, and why should we listen to you? What makes you the expert on all things business coaching and leadership?
Well, there's a question. So my name is Neale Lewis. I am a certified scaling up coach. Actually been a business coach now since 2007. So we're not far off 25 years. So maybe, just maybe, with 25 years of experience under the belt, there's a few things and tips that we picked up along the road that are there to help businesses. And I think as a coach, and I mentioned scaling up, our focus is really around helping really ambitious organizations that may have started up, may have already got some traction in the market, go to the next stage and to successfully scale up. And the world is not short of having startups. There's thousands of startups. There'll be maybe 10 or 15 startups in Derby this week, but what we maybe are a bit more short of is those successfully scale ups who really make an impact in the economy. It's the scale ups actually who create all the jobs, or 85% of all the jobs around the world are created by these mid-market organizations. So that's why we're so passionate about it. Most interventions tend to be either to help startups or to help bail out the big corporates who go wrong. So we think we've got a really clear niche in the market, and that these businesses, people think, well, you're already established, you're already reasonably successful, why would you need help? But it's just like an athlete in terms of that stop of their game. They're going to choose to have a coach who's going to keep them very focused to help them be the very best that they can be. And I like to think that's exactly the role that we play.
Absolutely. That is very concisely and very well put. So how did you become a scaling up coach? How did you become working for yourself? Because I've known you a few different guises.
Yeah.
So how did you become working for yourself? What made you take that leap of faith?
That's great question again. And for many years, my life and the reason that I came up to the East Midlands was to work in the hospitality industry, more specifically the brewing industry. So I spent 20 odd years at what was Bass, based in Burton-on-Trent, and then luckily Molson Coors, and had lots of different roles in that, from account director for all our business with Tesco, managing big pub groups like what was Enterprise Inns. Latterly was the customer marketing director, but also worked on brands like Carling and Grolsch. So I had a pretty varied corporate background. And in 2007, like a lot of people in the world, I didn't get on my immediate boss. I took a redundancy from the organization. And do you know what? I had no real idea what I was going to do at the time, but someone suggested to me that I might want to look at being a coach. And I said, well, why would I want to be a coach? What does a coach do? And it says, well, basically helps organizations to become more successful, helps people grow. And I guess a lot of the skill sets I'd picked up in my corporate world in terms of helping to develop people, helping develop great teams, working on strategy, working on sales and marketing. I was lucky enough to get an MBA at Nottingham Business School. That was again sponsored by the BAS. So a lot of things that I had invested in me over the years, it was really clear that I could then use those as transferable skills to help other businesses who hadn't had that benefit, hadn't had the benefit of that sort of long-term business education. So it really was a sort of an area, once I got into it and realized that actually it is an area that I could carve out a career in, that I've continued to invest and develop myself. First up, I took a franchise with an organization called Action Coach and was there for 7 years. And then about 4 years into that, my coach at the time said, Neale, if you ever want to work with mid-market companies, there's this organization called Scaling Up. Well, they're actually called Gazelles at the time. and you'd be well served to learn come and see how those tools and that education could really help you. So I did that. I was certified probably about 7 years ago, and as I said, that served us very well in helping
Gosh,
mid-market
was that
companies.
7 years ago?
Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, and we said in a great place now. I think the Scaling Up Coaching organization, we got about 200 coaches around the world now, so pretty significant in the sort of space we are in. Vern Harnish, who's the author of Scaling Up, remains a mentor of mine and a really good friend. We do a lot of things together now, which we'll talk about in a bit. But it's having that community of unbelievable coaches, many of whom have been very successful entrepreneurs in their own right, and may have had a coach in the past and think, actually, I'd love to give back as well. I'd love to be able to impart the skill sets that I've had in building, growing, and exiting significant sized companies and help others to do it. So we've got amazing people across the organization that we're always learning from. Unfortunately, the last couple of years means we haven't been able to be together much as a community, but I think we're back together in Dallas in May, looking forward to that massively, because even as a coach, you need to just re-energize your own batteries and get refocused and being able to give back in a way that you're really going to provide benefit to your clients.
Absolutely, Neale. One thing I like to ask my guests on the Tuesday talk show is their situation when they decided to go and work for themselves or to start a new business, because many people who have got a business idea may be scared off by thinking you have to have a massive business loan, or you have to find some angel investor, or you have to go on Dragon's Den to be successful. What was at stake at the time? You mentioned you had a redundancy package, but apart from that, what was at stake at the time for you in your personal life? What risks did you take?
Yeah, it was significant. But I've always had this adage that the day I don't jump out of bed with a zest for life is a day to move on. And that literally was what I got to in the middle of June 2007. And so it was at a time when we had both daughters were just starting out at 4 Mark Hall, so it's a private school, so that was suddenly a risk of not having an income, coming in anymore to fund education and that, and without having an immediate job to go to. But we used that summer to travel around Europe, which was amazing as a family. It was a unique time just to be able to go away for 3 months, travel around Europe, and also just to have a good think about what was important, what could I do, and where were my skills and those sort of things. And then, as I said earlier on, somebody had I think it was went networking for the first time in Ashbourne. Actually represented Wendy, my wife's company, which has sort of financial sort of consultancy at the time, and I was there networking for her, and that's when someone said you could potentially become a coach,
So do you still speak to that person, Neale, who gave you that little nudge towards the coaching life?
I haven't spoken to him for a year, but he was on one of the peer networks earlier this year. Yeah, it's probably someone who's known to the community. It's a guy called George Nicholson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we were at the Ashbourne Business Club, and bearing in mind, when I was in the corporate world, I never had to do a day of networking in my life. I mean, obviously, you're going at business and you're building relationships, that would be clients, but not networking with small businesses. And I think George was being coached by someone else at the time, and that's when he kind of said, "Look, you've probably got quite the attributes around that."
Shout out to George Nicholson.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, so I do remind him of that from time to time, that maybe I wouldn't be doing exactly what I'm doing right now with that sort of suggestion. So I took the redundancy payment I had and then used that to invest in the franchise and all the training that went with it, and all of the tools that go with that, because actually it made it a lot easier. I mean, if you're bearing in mind, I was reasonably successful in the corporate world, but knew nothing about running a small business, knew nothing around coaching. So investing in that and having a ready-made sort of business to go into. And then I think one of your guests in the last couple of weeks, Stuart Ross, and I have always worked together very closely. We were in that franchise together. That's where we got to know one another. Obviously got very similar interests. We worked, both of us, with high growth organizations, and that was out of that we kind of built that relationship. So there was still obviously, you know, risk involved. And I'll never forget saying to Wendy, my wife, you know, in terms of we'll all be good. And then suddenly in 2007, the financial crisis hits. 2008 was when we actually launched the business on the 1st of January 2008 at Company's House. And then for the first 3 or 4 months, you know, it was this Armageddon of a global crisis, people laying everybody off left, right, center, banks are going crazy. And we weren't getting any clients, and that was getting a bit worrying because you come out from sort of training whipped up into the fever that you're going to have a business up and running within no time, and it wasn't like that at all. So we had to dig pretty deep, and I think we managed to get a workshop away around about April, May time, and then that starts to get 1 or 2 clients out of that. But yeah, it wasn't all plain sailing by any stretch of the imagination.
No, absolutely. It doesn't sound that way. And it sounds like you've been, you know, a real roller coaster ride as well. I didn't know some of that. I've known you for quite some time, Neale, and I didn't know some of those things. So that's why I love talking to people on Tuesday Talk Show. If you get to know and ask the questions you won't necessarily ask in real life. And talking about questions, we need to dive into some more of these questions, Neale, because we are flying through time. And
can I just one point to make, though? I think
yeah.
What again allows me to have maybe more authenticity as a coach is having gone through tough times ourselves. I'm run a business, so I know what it's like, you know, to have to look and worry and the challenges that you go through. And I think that's really important, that you can have that empathy. And you certainly over the last couple of years, not necessarily it's all about coaching, but it's about knowing where people are and being able to say, well, look, I know I've been there as well, not just saying it with glibly, but actually that you have got that.
I think that's really, really important point to make there, Neale. Absolutely. One question I definitely want to ask you this morning is, how many people or businesses have you helped during your time as a business coach? You know, thinking about all the lectures that you've done, seminars, one-to-ones, do you have any sort of idea on the figure of how many people that you've touched and helped in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I saw that, and I tried to sort of write down sort of what I thought, and I had no idea. I mean, honestly, I've got no idea, but it would be into the thousands.
Wow. How do you think about that?
Yeah, and you know, I think from, as you say, just from, you know, when we first started out, we did quite a lot of group coaching sessions, and so we'd be doing that. Then, as you say, if you then think about the workshops, where we often have 100 people at a workshop. We did the Scale Up Summit in London in 2019 and had about 300 to that. And then I think I just was trying to make sort of, just in terms of who I've personally helped, there were probably over 300 high growth companies I've coached over the last 25 years or so. And just thinking about in the last 18 months, an extraordinary statistic. At the Neale Lewis Associates, so the coaching practice that I run, is we probably helped over 300 organizations just through the peer networking programs alone. So that's been massive. In for us as a business, we're scaling, we are growing out. I think we've got 7 associates in the practice now. And you know, we wouldn't have been able to do that, you know, just in terms of one man band winning these contracts. So we've won contracts across Birmingham. We work with Westminster City Council. We work with D2N2, obviously across Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, across the West Midlands as well. So we're able to make an awful lot more impact now. And even the last week or two, we just won some big interventions, big scaling up programs across Lincolnshire, again in Westminster. So we are moving on from just being a coach who's developing, you know, others, to a coaching practice that's you know, being able to help an awful lot more people. And that's really goes to the heart of what we do.
Exactly. And it's those people who you never know that you helped. You know, there's those people who sit at the back, don't put their hand up, but you may have said something to them that could have changed their opinion or their life, and you would never know that. And that's what I find absolutely fascinating about what you do. If you're watching this live in the office, at home, working from home, live or on catch up, send your comments and questions in, pick our brains. We would love to hear from you. We're going to dive into picking your brains now, Neale. Thinking of all those people you have helped, then, when you're working with businesses or individuals, is there a particular common theme that comes out that they struggle with? And what is it, and why do you think that is? And how do you help them overcome it? What's a common theme with business owners, and What do they struggle with?
Yeah, because we're working with so many different organizations, and by default they're looking to scale up. There are probably buckets of different themes, and unsurprisingly, the biggest challenge that most organizations face is around people. And I'm sure all the other guests that you've had on is all necessarily around people, helping the senior team get healthy and aligned, helping find the right people. Because most people have never been on a course about even how to hire, let alone retain top talent,
Yeah.
and that's massive at the moment. So the people thing is huge, and we often talk about helping them 10xing them as a leader, and then 10xing the senior team. So we probably focus on that more than anything else. So once you got them really focused on developing themselves, I love the adage of helping them become leaders, creating more leaders. Leaders being able
Oh,
to create more
yeah,
leaders.
like
And I
that.
think for every single organization, if you can then have that mindset, you're not managing anymore. You are in the business of being a leader, creating more leaders. If you're going to scale up and you've got to go from 20 people to 50 to 100, 200 people, you can only do that having great leaders. So that's often a common challenge. We know that growth sucks cash. So another massive challenge is helping make sure that they don't run out of cash, and to make sure that they understand numbers. And it's amazing how many business owners do not have a really keen grip on the numbers, or know how that works and around the balance sheet. Obviously, the last year or two, probably things have changed, because we not just help them on their strategic thinking, but maybe they've had to think about how to move into a new category or into a new market or pivot into something else. So helping them really sort of get into that area. And I think the other area is all around mindset as well. It is about making sure that, as we spoke about earlier on, that they have a mindset to win. They have got the right mindset, that whatever the situation is, that they will prevail. They've got the deep resilience around it. So I think those are sort of key areas that I'd call out.
Fantastic, fantastic. You mentioned resilience, and you also mentioned helping the leadership team be healthy.
Yeah.
That's something that you don't necessarily hear from a business coach. It is normally about the cash, the people, the training, the strategy. The healthy thing. How do you help leadership teams become healthier?
Yeah, well, not just when I say healthy and aligned. I think what I mean by that is making sure that they've got a healthy relationship with one another. So you
Yeah,
think about, in a startup, everyone knows each other, and you've got that sort of small business culture. Everyone knows each other by the first name. When you're suddenly getting out to a team that's got 100 people in it, 200, 300 people, often the culture changes. And you starting to get politics comes in. You start to get people who've got the silo mentality. You've got people who are, maybe their motives aren't always consistent with everybody else. So that's something that we really put a lot of attention around, making sure that they understand each other's styles, their differences, of why they have that. We do a lot of personality profiling to help them, again, around that. We use, and I think Stuart might have mentioned this last week, the 5 dysfunctions of a team by Patrick Lencioni, so that they can help them build out trust. And then we trust they can then build out commitment to, we trust they can have that productive conflict. They can have those rigorous debates and know that it's actually healthy to have a fallout with one another, because you're passionate about finding the right outcome. With that comes commitment. We're all going to do that, and then accountability and a focus on results. So that is absolutely the core of what we do about building out great teams. And then what I love doing is then helping them to build a great culture, underpinned by great core values, underpinned by the right behaviors in place. So that is one facet of being healthy, and that alignment. And I think you're right. The other point about being healthy is, right now, is making sure we've got a good balance
yes,
in our lives. I think that's probably where you're
yeah,
coming from, is that people are able to have the right balance. People have worked unbelievably hard, obviously in the last 18 months, and very trying circumstances, learning how to come to terms with hybrid working, learning how to come to terms with just a new marketplace. It puts huge stress on people.
yeah.
So I think that mental well-being is really important. I've had to really hone into that a lot more. One of the things I've had to change about myself as a coach is making sure I'm much more alive to when people aren't in a good place. And one thing certainly about guys, we're not necessarily very good at saying we're not in a good place. So it's really helping people through that as well.
Well, it sounds exhausting, Neil, what you do, but it also is incredibly rewarding, I bet. And
Yeah,
yeah,
and I
definitely
think you,
worthwhile.
you're so right, and I think as a coach, you have to keep yourself in good condition as well. As with my personal trainer first thing this morning, making sure that we're mentally in a good place as well, because your clients expect you to be in a good place. When
Yes,
investing in you, they expect you to be in a good place. Even if they're not okay, they expect you to be okay each time. So
yeah.
I think definitely in the middle of last year, I was absolutely proper shattered. I was really, really tired. And I needed a break just to make sure that I was recharged as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Right then, focusing on the year ahead, we just poked in noses into February, so we're already 1 month into 2022, which is incredible. I don't know where January went. So thinking about the year ahead, what are your top tips for business owners to succeed and help their business grow?
Well, I think I was thinking about this, and number one, and I talked about from my perspective, the importance of always sort of having something that you love doing, i.e., jumping out of bed with a vigor for doing that. So, number
Yeah,
one is absolutely follow your passion. If it's you're doing something that you don't love doing or things that don't give you energy, just put it onto the back burner. Just do something else. Life's too short. So, I think having that, get around, surround yourself with people who are on the same journey as you are as well. And now is always a good time of year. If you've got toxic people in your lives or people who are holding you back or just saying you're never going to make anything in your lives, just make a way of getting them out of your lives and just surround yourself with people who are there to encourage you, there to believe in you, build on your dreams, whatever that might
people
be.
that you look up
Make
to as well. Be
Yeah,
be around
definitely.
people that you aspire to be.
Yeah, yeah, and I think one of the most practical areas I'd like them to think about is just getting a piece of paper or a notebook and write down top 25 influencers that they're going to reach out to this year.
Oh, now we don't necessarily mean Instagram influencers, do we? We mean
We
people
don't
within our.
necessarily mean Instagram influencers. That might be fine, but I'm thinking more about people who can help take their business forward, people they look up to, people who are at the top of their game in their industry, people maybe in the banks or accountants who can maybe help them move forward, networking groups that people are going to, help them in that respect. Get that down, write down a list of top 25 people that are going to make a difference in your life this year, and then get to work on that list. Go and have lunch with them, keep in touch with them, find out what they're doing, have a podcast, whatever it is, but just make sure that you are surrounding yourself with the sort of people who are going to move you forward, and then just get a plan, whatever is a plan, but just take some time out to get a plan, get real clarity about what it is that you're going to do, and then get
What
accountability.
going back very briefly, Neil, to the top 25 influencers. I mean, how ambitious are we talking here? How ambitious should we think about?
Well, one of the books that you might want the listeners to get is a guy called Keith Arazi, Never Eat Alone. And Keith will
Ooh,
probably give you some tips around how do you go about constructing this list. And a lot of people are the ones that I just mentioned. But yeah, we did this exercise with a team in London yesterday, and we actually got to the end of it. We set ourselves down a challenge of one person who was like, "You're kidding me." If we were to be able to get in touch with that person, that would be insane. So it could be like the CEO of Google, or just a prime minister of a country, or just somebody that's like way out. There's no way in the name of the world that I'm ever going to be in touch with that. Just write it down, and
yeah,
then get to work, and you find out maybe in the 6 degrees of separation, whatever it's called, that you've got
yeah.
somebody who is already connected, or just 1 degree separation from that particular person, be it the president of the United States or somebody who is just so
No, you
far out.
never know. The universe may have been listening. It might just all, manifest itself. Who
Yeah,
knows?
exactly. Yeah, I think one of the team yesterday was Richard Branson, as they're going to touch base with. I think I can't remember, what the others were, but there's some pretty aspiring people that we're going to be reaching out to. So that's
And your last point, Neil, was about planning. Put a plan together. What headers should be put on this? If it's say it's a one sheet of A4, what sort of headers should be put on that A4 sheet to be thinking about?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what we do. We use a one-page strategic plan,
Cool.
which I'm happy just to give everyone, the show just a link to. And on that one-page strategic plan, it has everything from clarity about your values, your purpose, where you're heading, right through to what the key thrusts and capabilities of your organization, just for the numbers for the year ahead, just clarity about what revenue growth you're looking for, profitability, number of employees, whatever that might look like. And then what are the 5 big initiatives that you're going to get to work on the next 12 months? What are the big 5 things that are just going to make a huge difference? Then thinking about some of the critical numbers that you need to achieve. And then finally, over the next 90 days, what are the big priorities, 4 or 5 priorities again, that you and the team are going to get to work on? And who is going to do that by when? So that's exactly the simple one-page plan that we use with most of our clients, is bring their thinking laser-like onto one page.
Yeah, I love that. And that's something you can pin on the wall and make sure everyone who passes by every day has a little glance, little reminder. Yeah, I love that. And if you could share that link with us, that would be wonderful. Really useful for the listeners and viewers at home. And if you are watching this live or on catch up, send in your comments and questions. We would love to hear from you. We'll definitely get back to you if you're watching this on your catch up. I know some people watch this when they're on the rower or in the gym. So definitely we want to hear from you. Multitasking, that's what I Neale, what is your miracle morning like? You mentioned you've been having a PT session this morning. Do you have a miracle morning routine?
It's getting better. It all went out the window over Christmas, so I'm not going to lie. I've had to kind of get back to where we were. We have so yeah. This morning I was with my personal trainer. I don't do that every day, but that was a relatively early start in the gym at 6:45 this morning. Then come back when you're right on the 800 fast diet at the moment. So that's just been amazing, actually, just having a bit more control on what we're putting into our bodies and that. Bit of reading most mornings in terms of just could be a Harvard Business Review article or a blog that I think is really, really useful. Then at 2 minutes past 8, we have a daily huddle every single day, just 10 minutes with the team. What's up? Where's our focus today? Just to check in with one another, and if we've got any stucks, we then just address those, and then we get to work. So that's the sort of routine that I go on. If we're away on holiday, it might change a bit. I tend to go running a bit more then, but that's the routine.
And I love the huddles. Did that at Essential Print Services, and it really helped, like you say, focus people, energize people, and also you get to know things about people that wouldn't necessarily have talked about if the huddle wasn't there. For instance, there was an incident in the office where we didn't know what had happened, but one of my colleagues' grandma had just died, and it came out in the huddle. And if we hadn't had that huddle, she may have kept that in all day, and then I may have been left wondering, oh, what's up with so and so? What's wrong? She's not opening up. But in the huddle, it was a space where you could say whatever was on your mind, and that just changed the whole remit of the day. More compassion for her, and therefore she felt more supportive. And in the end, it's like, you know what, you shouldn't even be in the office, you should be at home with your family. But without that huddle, it wouldn't have come up into conversation.
And I think all again, the listeners, I'd really, really encourage them to do it. You notice that I mentioned we start our huddle at 2 minutes past 8. Start it at an odd time. If you're in the office, do it standing up. It doesn't necessarily need to be leader but and it should be no more than 10 minutes. Otherwise, you start to sort of get people lose interest in that. But just those 3 areas: good news and check in. What's up? Either what's our focus or priority for the day, and then where the stucks are. And it's
really just got really, really anything that may have been left behind the day before as well. That's really, really valuable thing to do. What's your biggest business challenge right now, Neale Lewis?
Well, we've got a huge opportunity, so not necessarily a challenge, but an opportunity. So I'm leading an amazing global program at the moment. It's called 20,000 Scale-Ups. So we are we've actually launched the program in London 3 years ago, but now in 2022 we launched with 20 global cities. And for whatever reason, it was actually the reason I probably launched the program in London first up. I lead this program globally, which is amazing for somebody who's based in Derby to lead this global program with Vern Harnish. So we've got cities from San Francisco, Dubai, Riyadh, London, New York, Paris, Munich. This year on the 7th and 8th of June, we go global with this major program. So really pumped about that. It's been a lot of time in the making, lots of frustrations last year, a lot of challenges last year just to get it to where we are. We've got a webinar tomorrow night, which tomorrow I think is the 2nd of the 2nd 22, and that launches at 2:22 p.m. Eastern time. So it's a symmetry that Vern loves, and that's to launch this global program. And our dream is to help 150 cities successfully scale 150 companies globally, which means we'll help 20,000 organizations. So if you ask me this question in 10 years time, we'll maybe able to say we've helped over 20,000 organizations, which is massive, and they get the chance to go to Harvard and meet up with amazing people. So yeah, my life changed a lot in terms of just being a single sort of coach, a few years ago, to having a pretty big leadership role, not only in my own coaching organization, but in the scaling up coaching organization as well. So yes, it brings its challenges of organizational skills, of bringing its challenges of inspiring another 20 coaches globally to run this through. But it's when you're on purpose, things are a lot easier.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that, and that's a great way to end the brain picking session of Neale Lewis with all your top tips. So thank you, Neale. If someone wants to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
LinkedIn's probably the easiest.
Yeah.
So my name is spelled quite uniquely for Neale, so it's Neale, and then Lewis, Lewis. I think it's probably on this as well. So yeah, just put Neale Lewis into LinkedIn, and delighted if anyone wants to reach out, make contact. And we've also actually got on LinkedIn the Derby Business Club, something that I've had for years and years. I think we've got about 3,500 members of the Derby Business Club. I actually like to do more in it. So maybe today's episode will publish onto the Derby Business Club, and I'll make it the feature. So that goes out to maybe 3,000 odd people on that. And then you can then start. It struck me we should be doing more on it. It's quite sort of, there's one or two people who do contribute, but it's a great medium for the Derby business community to come together. What's a hot networking event where I can learn this, or here's some ideas around that. So maybe giving that a bit more energy again might be more good as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to help you with that as well. Just let me know. Neale, that is the end of the Tuesday Talk Show. We have flown through our 30 minutes, as we always do. Time absolutely flies by at the Tuesday Talk Show. I'm going to wrap up the show, Neale, but then come back to you for your final thought at the end, please. So, Tuesday Talk Show with me, your host, Yvonne Gorman, powered by Essential Print Services based on Pride Park in Derby. Click the subscribe button if you're watching on the YouTube channel, and the bell icon to be notified of future episodes. So over to you, very special guest, Neale Lewis, scaling up extraordinaire, for your final thought, please.
Yeah, and this quote comes from Sheryl Sandberg, and hopefully it really resonates with everybody, but it's specifically for our profession. So I just want people to dwell on this for a second. Coaching is making others better as a result of your presence and making sure the impact lasts in your absence.
Oh, I've got goosebumps. That was great. That is a great final thought, Neale Lewis. Fantastic. So that is the end of the episode. If you like this episode, there are tons more on the Tuesday Talk Show YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and catch up with more episodes. But until next time, thank you again, Neale Lewis, for your precious time, and we'll see you soon. Okay, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.